Welcome back to the Reliably Intermittent Podcast. Back again for I guess this is full episode 7, 6. I don't know. We've had so many half episodes. I don't even know if the numbers really matter. It's a new one today. Back again with you is me, Aaron Ware with Clemans Nelson. And with me pretty much as always is Drew Esposito. Drew, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Getting ready for this next episode. I'm excited about it.
Right on. And then today we have a special guest for you for the first time. Our head honcho, our big cheese. Why don't you go ahead and tell our listeners who you are, sir?
Sure. Brian Butcher, President and CEO of Clemans Nelson and Associates. So what's going on today? Why'd you guys have me on?
Well, we thought, we thought it would be an opportunity to do another This Week in HR, continuing on our theme of employees behaving badly since we both work for you. We do a technology edition. And I think since Drew's so excited about this topic, I'm going to throw it over to Drew to let us know what dumb are we talking about this week.
Oh, I love this one. So, and I swear that, I'm not just always looking for people doing like pornography related offenses, right? Since it had the last one, but
they find you.
They find me. They come across my desk, or my TikTok feed, maybe something like that. So this one was an individual, very well respected in his field, fairly famous, who was on a Zoom conference call and decided that he was going to masturbate. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Makes a whole lot of sense. Just couldn't wait for an appropriate time. And his defense, or not defense, really, right? He admits to it. There was no mistake. His explanation, this is one of my favorite explanation was, I thought I muted my camera. I'm like, that's just not how technology works, right? You can mute audio. You can shut off your camera. You could cover your camera. But this is 1+1 when it comes to doing a video conference.
He's a smart guy too.
Very, very smart. I would say, knowing that I've got two bosses in the room, smarter than at least one of us, right? I'm not going to say that someone's smarter than both my bosses, but smarter than at least one of us who's on this conference. But the reason, when I started thinking about it, I started thinking about our clients, our existing personnel. What we started doing before the pandemic, way years ago, is why do employers not train? Why do they have an apprehension to training? Why do we get stuck in our old ways? Why do we not want to adapt, right? And kind of the importance of learnability. And who better to kind of talk about these issues or maybe point some of them out from our own perspective and from your perspective as president would be you. That's so me and Aaron decided to put our president on the hot seat. So,
why don't you tell our wonderful listeners a little bit about some of the things we've done here and some of the ideas behind it?
I can do that. Hopefully you guys don't regret this, but as a fringe millennial, I'm right on that fringe. I've become pretty accustomed to changing with technology. I can't say that was probably the case with this firm 5 or 6 years ago. We were still very, very successful, but that kind of technological revolution was just beginning. And as I started becoming more and more responsible for different functions within this company, I think one of the main ideas I had was if we don't adapt, if we don't kind of catch on with some of this technology, and some of it was little stuff, using your phone as a calendar versus having a written calendar, some of the things to streamline efficiencies, we were going to get left behind. Our competitors were were probably a little bit ahead of us on this. Now we quickly caught them, but some of the things we changed over the years, I mean, just from, modifying the way we were capturing our billable time, from doing it on a PDF to having it automated, where we can now utilize an app out in the field and capture our time real time.
Man, when Drew and I started at the same time, when I first started, I was still filling them out on the little books that we
Sure.
had.
Yeah.
I mean, in 10 years, we went from handwriting billings on little bill stubs, scanning them and emailing to them to accounting, to now entering our billings wherever we are on our phone. I mean, just as just one facet of tech.
Well, and I think we had some resistance at the beginning when we started this, I guess, jump into the 21st century. But I can tell you right now, everybody, at least on our team, for the most part, embraces the technology. And like Drew said, sometimes it's been good, sometimes it's been bad. I mean, I can tell you right now, our ability to adapt, and maybe this speaks to what we invested in as an IT firm, but our ability to adapt during this pandemic, utilizing Zoom, utilizing Teams, utilizing, some of the other virtual meeting software out there, probably enabled us to survive this pandemic, probably in a better position than I'd put even among our competitors out there. I mean, I don't think we missed a beat. Now, did work slow down because of, people were out of the office? Maybe slightly, but as far as us, communicating, staying together, adapting to legislative changes on the fly, I mean, I don't think we missed a beat.
Well, why don't we talk a little bit about, I think, some of the hurdles? Because, like you said, you're what would you say, a fringe millennial?
Yeah.
I guess I'm
Yeah.
I'm early new modern millennial.
Yeah.
No. We're, just,
1982.
just to be clear, I think we're all Xennials. Technically, there's a micro generation that is on the tail end of millennial, and the beginning of millennial and tail end of Gen X. There's a micro generation called Xennials out there.
Well,
Good Lord.
yeah. So I'm a 1982. I think when you have a successful organization, you typically have people who think in a variety of different ways. And obviously, people are always resistant to change because they don't know what it's about. Some of our hurdles simply came with, educating staff on how to use the software, how to use the new technology, because it can be uncomfortable. I mean, I can remember back in college, I was still texting using the T9. If you guys remember T9, where the words just auto populated and you kind of scrolled till the one you wanted in your text message. Whereas some of our staff were still using flip phones when we actually, probably pretty well into my career, they were still using those sorts of phones. So this was a big jump. Uh, I can tell you that one of my pet peeves, and this goes from my time as leadership as Clemans Nelson, as well as seeing some of my clients, is that people are always willing to invest in certain things, but what they don't invest in is assets to help their people be more efficient. Everybody always says work harder. Well, I disagree. I think it's work smarter. And if you can utilize this, technological evolution to your advantage, I think that's where you kind of put some of your money.
Well, and I think there's a great deal of value too in showing people, because I know we had some of this here, showing people how this can be beneficial, right? Because when you've done something for long enough that inertia takes hold, it's difficult to see the benefit at the start, right? But once you see, oh, okay, so if we do X, Y, and Z, like these remote meetings, even talking about those before the pandemic hit, obviously the pandemic put that at the forefront and was vital, but showing people, hey, these things have a great deal of value through what we do and how we can accomplish it. I think training them up, showing them the value, showing how it works before just kind of throwing them into it, I think really helped.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the training is so crucial. Obviously, Drew highlighted a mistake in how some people, failed to grasp exactly what the technological capabilities were. But not only is the training important, but who the trainer is important. It's got to be somebody who is willing to roll with the punches, because just because Aaron Ware, embraces new technology and it comes easy to him doesn't mean it's the same with somebody else who happens to be from a different generation and through no fault of their own is just less comfortable with the technology. So I think it's really important to see who the trainer is.
Mhm.
And not only does that person have to be a good communicator, but sometimes they have to have thick skin because there's going to be bumps along the road that you might go through when you're trying to. I mean, the changes we made were very important to our organization. I mean, changing how you capture your billable hours, that's our main driver of revenue. Changing how we tracked our time and processed our payroll. And that may seem like, duh, but those are big things when people aren't used to doing it that way.
Yeah, and I think it really emphasized when I read, and first laughed out loud about the article, is a lot of training is so job oriented, like so duty oriented, that there should also be some generic training that is at a certain level, right? Like that we expect all of our employees to have this ability level with technology, with Microsoft Suite, with the internet. And if you're going to throw, like you said, Brian, a program at someone, you need to get them that training with it so mistakes don't happen. Now, don't get me wrong, there's never a situation, this is just more than a mistake. Like you shouldn't be doing that while on a Zoom meeting. That's just never going to be acceptable. But there could be other situations where you don't realize your camera's on and it's after hours, right? It's not when you were supposed to be on a work conference call. And you end up with something like that. I had a client that got blackmailed because they had sent nudes and they got catfished. And then the person found out that they were in a position of power, and so they were trying to blackmail them, pay me money or else I'm going to release this out there to the public. So understanding the risks and all that, and dealing with kind of my frontline blue collar workers, right? They have this, I don't need technology. It has nothing to do with my job. But now with the pandemic and the closures and my clients saying you need to log in from home or check in with your supervisor once a week on this, they're not comfortable with anything. And if we would have given them a little bit of the support they need from an HR perspective, from a training perspective, it would have been uh, immensely useful.
Sure. Well, it's 2020, right? There's very little that isn't um, moving towards more tech utility, right?
Mhm.
Tech is permeating every facet of society. So the more you can get folks a baseline level of training and comfortability with basic tech is like setting a foundation that you can build off of other things, right? You can use the foundational stuff to say, okay, now we did this over here. Now here's how we can use this other cool thing that's going to make your job easier or more efficient or more productive because you did this. Now from there you can go here, and they'll be able to see it because they have that foundation, they have that understanding of the basic stuff.
Well, if,
um,
if you don't buy in, you're going to be left behind. I mean, heck, right now, just before we hopped on here, we're talking about how we can modify utilizing our work calendars just so people know where people are because we have been a flexible employer during this pandemic. A lot of people are working from home, but there are times when you still need to see somebody. And instead of writing down where your location is on a piece of paper, it might be easier to just click on the calendar app on your phone and being able to see, hey, Drew Esposito is remote today. So I might have to pick up the phone or set up a Teams meeting with him versus walk down to his office and knock on the door. Uh, I mean, just little things like that. And if you don't support your personnel from a training standpoint, you're set up to fail. And the last thing any organization needs is a naysayer when you're trying to make an organizational change. People talk about organizational development and change agents. Well, one of the big impediments to that is what somebody who basically throws up a roadblock just because they don't know what's going on, and not for any good reason, but that can slow down an organization's ability to adapt at any time.
Well, and I don't think we're here advocating for change for the sake of change, right? It's change with a point. It's change with a purpose. It's change with a goal in mind, that we're saying, here's where we are, here's where we want to go. And this course of action, as opposed to the inertia based way we've been going, that's going to get us there more effectively or more efficiently in a way that we can go there and expand into this other thing, because we're doing that thing that we've always done in this way better, more quickly, more efficiently. Now we've got time to do this other thing over here too. Kind of like what Drew, you were saying with your blue collar folks. If they can get their stuff done more efficiently, more quickly, it may open us up to be able to incorporate another revenue stream, another area of productivity, service, what have you, depending on what they do, that benefits everybody.
And I think human resource professionals, if I had to guess, I would think that training is something that they all really try to advocate for and get, but they get shot down by the Brian Butchers, right? By the presidents of their companies, by the CEOs, by the peoples that are really focusing on profit or focusing on, if you're public sector, on taxpayer dollars. They'd rather see a pothole patched than 5 people in $1,000 training. But HR knows the value of training. And I think in HR professionals right now, take what the pandemic has given you to say, this is a highlight, because you can go, remember when this happened and we didn't have X. And remember when I advocated for Y, but you said no, right? Or remember that it took us 6 months to catch up. Like, whenever you can speak to things in terms of real world action, right? That's the way to sell it and get buy-in to your bosses and to your blue collar people, right? Because you need buy-in from both top and bottom. And HR is always playing that middle ground, right? Where they're supposed to be the employee advocate, but they also have to recognize that they serve one boss, right? So they're playing that middle ground. They got to get buy-in from both sides on how to train and keep and why I want to cross-train departments and things like that. And I just think it's so important to highlight it right now, especially people going into their new budgets in the next year, why they may want to incorporate this.
Well, it's a heck of a lot easier to be reactive than convince people that proactive is the right way to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You've got a lot of hurdles with that. So the back to the change agent kind of concept, that's where your change agents are most effective, is being able to take that real world approach, that real world benefit to making the changes that you can see are going to actually make the situation better without having to react and then lose time, lose productivity, lose whatever you did in getting back to your status quo because you weren't proactive in addressing kind of the oncoming issues.
Well, hell, look, I mean, look at you guys right now. You guys are world famous podcasters, and had we not embraced technology, I don't know that you'd be here. But what we are doing is we're providing a resource to our clients, free of charge, where they can still see us, and it's been a replacement during this pandemic for that face-to-face contact. And had we not embraced technology, and had we not inadvertently hired somebody who happened to have a Emmy award-winning podcast previously, Aaron Ware, we wouldn't be in that position. But I think if you don't buy, I think the message is, if you don't buy into technology, you're going to get left behind. And there's so many cool things it can do for not only your organization, but for, people individually. And, keeping people happy in an organization is also a big deal. And there's enough stressors out there right now that if we make their job a little easier to do, I think we're doing the right stuff.
And before we kind of wrap up, because I think we're at a good spot, when I was kind of saw that article and then was reading some other articles, I found a great quote, and I want to give credit where it's due. So I don't have any idea what this gentleman does for a living, but his name is Victor Salgado. So I read an article he wrote in talking about adaptability and change. He talked about this term of art called learnability, and I'm just going to take this quote from his article, which is a great quote. And learnability is adaptability and change. But he says, learnability is what made it possible for you to have different business today than you had when the pandemic began. and learnability implemented as a culture with all of your employees is what will make your business a leader in its field. I think that's straight to the point, poignant, hits on what you were talking about, Brian, that maybe 10 years ago, 12 years ago, we may have been slightly behind, competitors, and we want to be a leader in the field, and we had to catch up, and we have to be able to continue to learn and adapt, whether it's a change caused by a national pandemic or a change caused just because we are moving in that direction as a society. You got to be able to learn and adapt. And to learn and adapt, you have to educate and train, right? You can't separate these. You don't magically learn this stuff. You got to put in the hard work so you can work smarter in the future. I don't know if anyone has anything else. That was my little spiel, but I love that little quote from him.
Yeah, I don't want to follow that. That was awesome.
Yeah, I just like to say, hey guys, it's been a pleasure and an honor to be a guest on the Reliably Intermittent podcast today.
Thanks, boss, for joining us.
Hey, it was great. Everybody I know watches this podcast and listens to it. So keep up the good work.
And as always, we want to encourage people to like, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe. Watch everything to the end, please. Even if you're not actually watching, get to the end of the episode for us. It helps us out. Hopefully YouTube doesn't catch on. But as always, Drew, it's been a real fun time. And until next time, to all of our listeners, thank you.
Thanks for joining us, Brian.
All right. Later, guys.
All right.
We want to thank you again for joining us on the Reliably Intermittent podcast. Now it's time for a bit of a disclaimer. This podcast and all others on this feed are for informational purposes only and not legal advice. No attorney-client relationship is formed by listening to this podcast or any others on the feed. Should you require or want legal advice, we encourage you to reach out to an attorney or statutory legal counsel, as the case may be. Thanks again for joining us, and we will talk to you next time.